Right now, we are going to talk about the major drought and how the markets have moved this week with Jerry Gidel right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe. So Jerry, how are you today? We had the rally for corn and wheat and the going down. Do you think the drought in the United States and around the world is behind this? We are seeing over 300 million acres of drought in the United States, are reports saying.
Exactly. The drought monitor really kind of put some scary things out there this week in the U.S. And the other thing, of course, you're back in South America, where you are quite familiar. Argentina is not looking very good either. That wheat crop down there is looking pretty poor on things at this juncture. And also, it looks like that the Argentinian farmers are not really just planting corn like they in hope for a rain. They're kind of waiting for the rain type situation. So, in the corn and wheat side of things, it kind of reflected what happened in last week's stocks reports, and that along with this weather outlook, and then that gave us some early strength. Now things have kind of slipped back as the week's gone on in both those markets, primarily because the financial world concerns about recession, the higher interest rates. You got another indication of that today, and we had a kind of a beat up in the financials and equities today because of that. But the corn and wheat kind of ignored it, or at least corn did for sure. On this Friday going into the weekend, and that, but that's the twist of it here. That the money managers that really control a lot of the speculative money at this point, their hearts are still over in the equity markets. They're not really born and brewed type of commodity traders like most of Chicago's world is involved in. And so, they're today we had too good of a jobs number, so all of a sudden we needed to worry about the fact the Fed's going to jack up the interest rates, and so that's bad for the equities. That's the kind of stuff that's been floating around. We haven't really been following some of the fundamentals here in the corn and soybean world because of it. But there is a longer term impact. But sometimes people get kind of trapped in the long term ideas in their short term trading.
And also on the background, we have the Ukrainian retreat over there.
Oh, well, the Russians have not had very good luck here after they declared four of those provinces under their control. They lost some of the activity last week in the northern areas, and I heard that the south is having some good advances by the Ukrainians versus the Russians, which is also prompting a lot of concern from the U.S. president here about uh, President Putin maybe actually utilizing his threat of a nuclear type of tactical nukes type situations because his armies are not doing as well as everyone thinks he wants to have the Putin to do it. So it's getting kind of complicated. And that's the other big feature of the thing. If we got something that rallies up here, or gets the point where all of a sudden he pulls the plug on the food corridor, both corn, wheat, and even to some extent some the excuse me, the sunflower uh, exports out of the Ukraine would definitely go back to a lot lower level, and that would make a significant difference in the amount of exports available to the world, and that could really change wheat and corn again pretty dramatically. But right now, we're kind of balancing all these things, and we're going to wait till next Wednesday, I guess, before we really figure out if what's going to happen here with the corn and soybeans.
Now I'm eager to hear what are your estimates for the October supply and demand report from the USDA.
Well, the real twist on this thing, some of the information that we had from last week is really an important factor in what's gone on here with our S and Ds. You know, the corn number on stocks turned out to be like about 145, 150 million less than expected. And there was this, wow, where did that happen here? Then they stared over in the fact that the USDA reduced the U.S. Wheat crop by about 150 million bushels. And so that less wheat that was available around, and not to some extent that we lost specifically 150 million of U.S. wheat. It was definitely a factor that kept the markets. Uh, the shift of it is really indicating the fact that the amount of wheat that we fed in the U.S. plains this year was very, very modest because high prices and lack of availability just really that. So what do you got to do? You're going to feed what else you can feed, which is going to be sorghum and corn. And so that being the case, the corn stocks were down, from 1.53 down to 1.38, and that because of that feature. Well, that's part of the factor in this too. Um, how we got to these stocks, because our beginning stocks here for corn uh, have been tightened up, and right now we finally came out with the various estimates from Reuters here last night and this morning, and their expectations. Excuse me. We're kind of in the general trade of ideas here with the numbers for corn production. They're coming out with a 171.8 bushel yield. That's down from 172.5. Uh, Interestingly enough, I think that there was a lot more attitude that the stock might be closer to 170 or 171, but we did end up having a prominent uh, brokerage firm that has quite a few commercial people involved in it, and that came out with 173.9, I think it was. So I think that calmed down some of the reduced some of the other estimates in the trade. And the twist of it is another prominent commercial entity had a 170. 1.2, I think it was. So uh, right now, at least, uh, I'm still looking at 171, and that's a significant, interesting number because that really does take down about 100 and excuse me, 25, 30 million production. And wow, with a smaller beginning stock, and the production number being down, all of a sudden we've got to end up actually take down exports by 75 million to keep ourselves at a 1 billion 20 million or so carryover stock, because I don't sense the USDA in the month of October is going to take their carryover stock below 1 billion. And so, and to some extent, our export sales up to this point on corn have been more than lackluster at this point. The Chinese have been kind of biting their tongue and not buying anything from us. It's been kind of surprising that the Europeans haven't stepped up. They've been trying to get some of the corn from Ukraine that they've been kind of getting out through the rail system, and that because their crop was poor. They're actually, France was talking about their crop only being 10 million metric tons here at the end of this week. I think that's down at least to 50% or more from their normal crop size at this point. So there you go. Here we are at a very tight situation on that. The stock numbers and the feed usage type situations on wheat going to be down a little bit back and forth here, and that so we're going to take this the 600 million number on wheat, down to maybe around 520 or 530 million carryover stock. Soybeans is the wild card on the other side of the coin here, with some higher production numbers, or excuse me, higher stock numbers that came through here.
Yes, and no matter what, Brazilians and Argentinians will plant a lot of beans.
Yes, that's one of the kind of gets back to our first discussion about some of the dryness down there in Argentina, and the Brazilians are off to picking up steam on their plantings at this point. Up there in Mato Grosso, the moisture's been adequate at this point. There's really kind of an interesting twist, though. Uh, the dryness is so intense in Argentina, could easily start moving north. That's exactly what happened last year. And so Rio Grande do Sul, along with Paraná and Mato Grosso do Sul, had some pretty tough corn crop issues back last year. And to some extent, the second crop corn in Mato Grosso kind of bailed it out. And the soybean side of this thing, yes, is looking pretty. Everybody's optimistic about production, and the twist of it is here in the soybean side of things is that the carryover stock that we had last week of about 34 million, I think it was higher. The USDA increased their production by about 30 million. Then you started putting together all the final details on soybeans here for the USDA's upcoming report, and that the USDA actually increased excuse me, uh, their stocks number, or excuse me, their export numbers, and that they took them down in the numbers back in August and September, and then the final number came through, and it's kind of right back up there where it was, and then we have a small reduction in crush. So the twist of it all is that the residual number, which is, it's an interesting scenario. It's kind of your balancing point to figure out how things are going and how they logically fit together, and that, because officially there is no residual, and we have exports of beans, we have U.S. crush, we have so many bushels, coming in, so it all should match to zero. Well, statistics don't do that, but in general, on the agricultural side, we've run in the last 3 to 5 years, we've run around 15 to 20 million carryover residual. This year, this calculation gets down to 2 million. And that's kind of interesting, because the USDA, when they decided to increase the crop size after the stocks report to make things match up, they could have went to 40 million and we'd had a little bit more residual. They only went 30, so I think they were a little surprised by some of the late statistics on that. So definitely there's lots of little details and ideas that we're going to be looking at as we see these production reports, and also the world supply demand numbers on Wednesday, October 12th.
All right, let's see. Let's follow up next week.
Yes, it's going to be probably set the tone for us as we go forward here. To some extent, the yields that we've been hearing so far have been real mixed in the western part of the U.S., and maybe slightly steady to higher, maybe in some of the eastern points. But right now, at least, even if the numbers come out, there's always going to be people saying, "Well, we're going to have a smaller crop next month, or we turned the corner and the bean crop's going to be even bigger." There's always lots of discussion this time of year about the U.S. harvest as it comes along, but it will be an interesting one on Wednesday.
All right, thank you very much.
You bet. Have a good weekend and enjoy the fall.